She was born into a quiet world. From the moment she opened her eyes, sounds that filled other homes were missing in hers. Voices, laughter, music, even the hum of the refrigerator or the morning chirp of birds. None of it reached her ears. Yet the world around her was not silent. It was full of movement, light, color, and energy. She could feel vibrations through her skin and notice patterns in the way people moved, how the wind swayed the trees, or how the floors shook slightly when someone walked by. Her parents noticed her curiosity early on. While she couldn't hear, she watched intently. She would mimic gestures, read lips with surprising accuracy, and react to the world in ways that showed she understood more than anyone expected. People would sometimes underestimate her, thinking she was fragile or slow because she didn't respond in ways they were used to. But in truth, she was absorbing everything, processing it in a way that was invisible to most. At school, the challenges became more obvious. Teachers didn't always know how to communicate with her, and classmates sometimes treated her differently. Group activities, songs, and games that relied on sound were confusing. She watched her peers play and perform, trying to understand what it meant to be part of something she could not experience fully. Sometimes, she would sit quietly, her eyes wide and observing, not out of shyness, but because she was learning, remembering, and figuring out her place in a world that seemed built for hearing people. Despite this, she never seemed discouraged. There was a spark in her, a resilience that kept her trying again and again. She had an old keyboard in her room. She couldn't hear the notes, but she would touch the keys, feel the vibrations, and imagine melodies. Sometimes she would tap on the keys rhythmically, not knowing if it sounded right to anyone else, but it made sense to her. Her parents would watch, amazed at the patterns she created, sensing a kind of musicality that no one could explain. Neighbors and family friends often doubted her abilities. They asked her parents why they bothered with lessons or instruments, saying she would never experience music like others did. Some of these words hurt, and yet, they seemed to ignite a determination in her parents to support her more, to help her discover her own way of experiencing sound. Her mother would place her hands on the piano, guiding her fingers to follow simple rhythms. Her father would tap his foot on the floor while she matched the beat with her hands. Slowly, she began to understand the invisible threads of music through touch and movement. Her school organized music classes, and every week she would watch other children play instruments. She longed to join, to be part of the notes that filled the classroom. The other children would giggle or look confused when she asked to try an instrument, unsure how someone who couldn't hear could participate. But she never let this stop her. She observed the patterns, noticed the vibrations when someone hit the drum, or felt the bass of the piano through the floor. She began to understand the rhythm as a physical presence, something that could be felt rather than heard. There were quiet victories that no one noticed. She learned to clap in rhythm with her classmates, not because she heard the beat, but because she felt the motion and timing. She could tap her foot or shake her hands, and someone standing nearby could recognize her movements matched the music. These small successes gave her hope. They were proof that the world of music was not entirely closed to her. She just had to find her own way to enter it. Outside of school, she would spend hours in her room, experimenting. She had old pots, pans, and utensils that she used to make sounds. She hit them in patterns, feeling the vibrations run through her hands and arms. It became a game, a puzzle of motion and timing, a personal language she was creating with every tap and knock. It was messy and imperfect, but it was hers. And in those moments, she discovered joy that didn't rely on anyone else's approval. Friends who truly understood her supported these experiments. They would stand nearby, feeling the vibrations alongside her, nodding in encouragement. It was rare to find such patience and empathy, but when they did, the connection was magical. Laughter and shared effort bridged the gap that words and sounds could not. These experiences nurtured her confidence, showing her that even if the world doubted her, she could trust herself. Her fascination with rhythm deepened when she discovered videos of drummers online. Watching their hands and feet move in perfect coordination, she was mesmerized. She noticed the tiny shifts of the sticks, the bounce, the timing, and the energy in every movement. She couldn't hear the beats, but she could imagine them, feel them, and recreate them on surfaces she could control. Every wooden table or empty bucket became her drum kit, every tap a message of determination. Her family noticed her obsession growing. They decided to take a risk and get her a real drum set. The moment it arrived, her eyes lit up. She climbed onto the seat and placed her hands on the drums. She closed her eyes and let her fingers explore the surfaces, striking and tapping, feeling the vibrations course through her arms and chest. Each beat resonated with her in a way that was entirely personal. She wasn't just playing. She was communicating, expressing herself without words or sound. Neighbors who came to visit were skeptical. They would shake their heads, whispering doubts. "She can't hear," they said. "How can she possibly play?" But she didn't mind. Their doubts were like wind against a strong tree. They bent but did not break her resolve. She practiced relentlessly, learning coordination and timing, imagining rhythms in her head, feeling them through the drums. Slowly, she began to develop her own style, one that relied on intuition, motion, and an unshakable sense of rhythm. School events began to include her more cautiously. Teachers saw her focus, her determination, and even her ability to follow patterns that others struggled with. She was allowed to participate in small performances, often with the support of a mentor who helped her align her movements with the music. Each event brought new challenges and new triumphs. Sometimes she stumbled, sometimes she got the timing wrong, but she always returned to her drums, learning more with each attempt. Her classmates gradually began to notice. Some were inspired, some curious, and a few even began to see her not as someone limited, but as someone extraordinary. Her ability to feel the music, to embody it in ways others could not, became a source of fascination. Whispers of admiration replaced the earlier doubts, and slowly, a reputation began to form. She was the girl who defied expectations, who danced with rhythm in a world of silence. Even in her quiet moments, she dreamed bigger. She imagined standing on a stage, drums in front of her, a crowd watching, not knowing if she could truly play, yet sensing the power of her presence. She didn't just want to participate in music. She wanted to shake the world with her performance. That dream became her fuel. Every tap, every vibration, every practice session was a step closer to making it real. She was still a child of silence in a world of sound, but she was learning to create her own language within that silence. The drums were more than instruments. They were a bridge between her world and the one around her. They allowed her to communicate, to express, and to be heard in a way that transcended ordinary understanding. In those moments, she was free, powerful, and unstoppable, even if no one else could see it yet. Her journey had only just begun. Each day brought new lessons, new experiments, and new victories. The world may have doubted her, but she had already discovered something far more important. Her own strength, her own rhythm, and her own voice. And in the quiet of her room, surrounded by the vibrations of her drums, she was ready to take the next step, to show everyone that music was not just for those who could hear, but for anyone brave enough to feel it deeply and follow their heart. She had spent countless hours tapping on tables, buckets, and anything that would vibrate beneath her hands, but nothing compared to the thrill of sitting behind a real drum set. The moment it was placed in her small room, she could feel the energy it carried. The bass drum felt solid and powerful. The snare had a crispness that excited her fingers, and the cymbals shimmered under her touch. It was more than just an instrument. It was a portal to the world she had longed to enter, a world where rhythm could speak louder than words. Her parents watched her closely, noticing the intensity in her eyes. They had seen her determination before, but there was something different this time. She climbed onto the drum stool, her fingers brushing over the drumheads, her feet finding the pedals with a careful precision that came from hours of practice on improvised surfaces. She didn't just play. She explored. Every tap, every strike was a question, a search for a sound she could feel in her bones. At first, her attempts were uneven. She would hit the drums too softly, or the timing of her hands and feet wouldn't match. But each time she played, she learned something new. She discovered how the bass drum could be felt through the floor, how the snare responded to a firmer strike, and how the cymbals created a subtle vibration she could sense if she leaned close. She began to experiment with combinations, creating patterns that made sense to her, even if no one else could hear them. It was during one of these sessions that a music teacher, who had been quietly observing her progress, suggested a series of lessons. First, she was nervous. Lessons meant expectations and structure, and she wasn't sure she could follow along like the other students. But the teacher was patient, understanding her unique way of experiencing music. He taught her to watch the movement of his hands and the way he counted beats visually, helping her translate the rhythm into something tangible she could feel. The lessons became a routine, and with each session, her confidence grew. She learned to control the intensity of her strikes, to coordinate hands and feet in ways she had never imagined possible, and to recognize subtle differences in vibrations. She developed a sense of timing that was both instinctive and deliberate. Even though she couldn't hear the music, she could sense its structure, like a puzzle she could solve with her body and intuition. Friends began to notice changes too. Some were curious, some inspired, and a few were skeptical. They would gather in her room, standing quietly as she played, watching the way her body moved with the drums. Her hands and feet were in constant motion, but there was a fluidity, a rhythm that seemed to connect with something invisible. Some friends tried to join in, clapping or tapping alongside her, learning to follow the vibrations she created. The room became alive with energy, a silent symphony that only those who paid close attention could feel. School performances were on the horizon, and her teacher suggested she try playing in front of others. The idea terrified her. She had never performed publicly, and the thought of being watched while she struggled was intimidating. But her teacher reminded her that rhythm was not about perfection. It was about expression. She began small, practicing in front of her family first. Her parents clapped and cheered, their encouragement helping her overcome the fear that had held her back for so long. She started to understand that drumming was more than just making noise. It was about storytelling, about creating a world where she could communicate feelings and energy without words or sound. Every beat had meaning, every pattern a message. She experimented with speed and intensity, learning to convey excitement, calmness, or suspense purely through rhythm. The drums became an extension of herself, a mirror reflecting her determination and creativity. Outside of lessons and practice, she spent time studying other drummers. Videos and performances fascinated her. Even if she couldn't hear the music, she watched their movements closely, noting how hands and feet moved together, how their bodies leaned into each beat, how energy flowed from them into the audience. She would mimic these movements, adjusting them until they matched her own sense of rhythm. Slowly, she began to develop her own style, one that was unique, instinctive, and deeply personal. Her dedication drew attention. Some neighbors, who had doubted her abilities before, started to watch in quiet admiration. They could feel the vibrations of her practice sessions through the walls, and they realized that what they thought was impossible was very real. She was creating music in her own way, and it was powerful enough to resonate even without sound. The doubt that had once surrounded her began to fade, replaced by curiosity and respect. In school, her participation in music classes improved dramatically. The teacher encouraged her to take part in group sessions, helping her synchronize with other students through visual cues and physical feedback. At first, it was challenging. She had to watch closely, anticipate movements, and adjust constantly. But she thrived under the challenge. Her ability to stay focused, her sharp observation, and her innovative approach allowed her to contribute meaningfully to every session. She was no longer just a silent observer. She was an active participant, and her peers began to see her not as someone limited, but as someone extraordinary. The turning point came during a rehearsal for a school concert. She was assigned a solo part on the drums, a short segment where she could showcase her skills. She practiced relentlessly, feeling each beat in her body, imagining the energy it would create in the auditorium. When the day arrived, her heart raced. She climbed onto the stage, the drumsticks in her hands, the lights bright, and the audience waiting. There was a moment of silence as everyone watched, uncertain of what to expect. Then she began to play. Each strike was precise, every movement deliberate, yet full of emotion. The vibrations traveled through the floor, the drums resonating with her energy. Even though she could not hear the applause, she could see the astonishment on the faces around her. Teachers and classmates exchanged surprised glances, realizing that the girl who had once struggled to participate in music was now commanding the stage with skill and confidence. Her performance was not flawless, but it was powerful. The energy she created, the rhythm she maintained, and the passion she exuded made everyone forget for a moment that she was deaf. They were captivated, feeling the music in a way that went beyond sound. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. She smiled, exhilarated, feeling a sense of accomplishment she had never known before. The fear and doubt that had once held her back were replaced by pride and determination. After the performance, people approached her with questions and admiration. How could she play so well without hearing? How did she maintain timing so perfectly? She explained in simple gestures and words that she felt the music, that rhythm was a language she could understand through her body and intuition. Her explanation fascinated them. They realized that her ability was not a limitation but a unique gift, a testament to her perseverance and creativity. Her confidence soared after that day. She continued to practice and experiment, pushing the boundaries of what she could achieve. She learned new rhythms, tried complex patterns, and explored improvisation. The drums became not just a hobby but a central part of her identity. She knew that the journey ahead would have challenges, but she also knew that she had discovered a path that no one could take away from her. Through all of this, she remained humble and focused. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It was practice, patience, and passion that made the difference. She kept her eyes on her goals, constantly seeking ways to improve and express herself more fully. The world of music, once distant and inaccessible, was now a space where she belonged, a space where she could create, communicate, and inspire. By the end of this part of her journey, she had transformed from a curious child experimenting with vibrations to a confident young performer capable of commanding attention through rhythm alone. The drums had become her voice, her way to connect with the world, and her source of joy and empowerment. She had learned that limits exist only in the mind, and that determination, creativity, and resilience could break through barriers that others thought were insurmountable. She was ready for the next step, ready to face bigger challenges, and ready to show the world that music was not only for those who could hear, but for anyone brave enough to feel it deeply and passionately. Even though she had made remarkable progress with her drums, challenges never disappeared completely. Each day brought new obstacles, both from the world around her and from herself. There were people who still doubted her abilities, who whispered that she could never truly perform like a normal musician. Their skepticism sometimes followed her in school hallways, in casual conversations, and even in her own mind. It was not enough to be talented. She had to prove herself over and over again. At school, music classes became more complex. The teacher introduced faster rhythms, more complicated coordination between hands and feet, and pieces that required intense focus. While other students could rely on hearing the beats, she had to rely solely on feeling and observation. Sometimes she struggled to keep up, her hands missing cues or her feet falling behind. These moments were frustrating, and she occasionally felt waves of doubt that made her question whether she could belong in the music world at all. Outside of school, the pressure grew as well. Neighbors and relatives, who had been cautiously supportive, would occasionally comment on her limitations. They didn't mean to be cruel, but their words stung. How can she really perform without hearing? They would ask. It was as if no one could see the determination behind her actions or the effort she poured into learning every vibration and rhythm. Their doubt became fuel, however, and she used it to push herself harder, to practice longer hours, and to refine her technique in ways that amazed even her closest supporters. Her family recognized these moments of struggle and provided support without overwhelming her. They understood that she needed both encouragement and space to process her frustrations. Her mother would place her hands on the drums, guiding her through tricky rhythms, while her father would tap a steady beat on the floor with his foot to help her synchronize. Slowly, she began to master more complex patterns, discovering new ways to connect her hands, feet, and body into one fluid movement. Each victory, no matter how small, was celebrated with smiles, claps, and quiet acknowledgement. At times, loneliness crept in. While some friends were patient and supportive, others could not relate to her experiences. She often watched peers chat about music they could hear or discuss concerts they had attended. The conversation felt distant and inaccessible, a reminder of the divide between her world and theirs. Yet she never allowed herself to retreat completely. She found ways to connect, sharing her rhythms through demonstration, allowing others to feel the vibrations of her performance through the floor or through claps and taps. Slowly, she built her own network of friends who understood that music could be experienced in multiple ways. The next challenge came when she was asked to participate in a group performance at a school event. This was a major test, as it required her to synchronize perfectly with other musicians who relied entirely on sound. The thought of performing in front of a live audience filled her with anxiety. How could she maintain timing? How could she follow cues that others gave through sound? She spent nights imagining the performance, visualizing every movement and every beat, practicing over and over on her drums until she felt she could anticipate the flow of music. Her teacher played a crucial role during this time. He devised a system of visual and physical cues that allowed her to follow along with the group. Sometimes he would tap her shoulder or move his hands in patterns she could see. Other times, he would emphasize the vibrations in the floor or the subtle movements of other musicians' bodies. It was not an easy process. There were mistakes, moments of confusion, and frustration that made her doubt herself. But slowly, she began to understand the signals and adapt her playing to match the group. She discovered that her sensitivity to vibrations gave her an advantage. She could detect patterns that others overlooked and anticipate transitions in the music. Meanwhile, the opinions of peers and neighbors created another layer of challenge. Some were openly skeptical, questioning why she should even attempt to perform publicly. Others expressed admiration but seemed nervous about what might happen if she failed. Their doubts sometimes weighed heavily on her, making her wonder if she was setting herself up for embarrassment. But each time, she reminded herself of all the hours she had spent mastering rhythms, of all the victories she had achieved despite the odds. She resolved to let her determination speak louder than their skepticism. Internally, she battled a different kind of challenge. The pressure to be perfect. She had learned to expect the best from herself, to push her limits, and to strive for precision in every movement. Yet, with each performance opportunity, a wave of anxiety would rise, making her hands tremble and her heart race. She learned to breathe deeply, to focus on the sensation of the drums beneath her hands and feet, and to remember that rhythm was not about flawless execution but about expression. This mental shift helped her channel nervous energy into creativity and energy, making her performances more dynamic and emotionally engaging. During one particularly grueling practice session, she discovered a new strength. She was working on a complex pattern that combined rapid hand movements with precise footwork. After countless attempts, she finally executed it perfectly. The sense of accomplishment was profound. She realized that her body had learned to internalize rhythm, to respond instinctively to cues, and to maintain coordination even under pressure. This breakthrough gave her a new level of confidence, and she began to approach challenges with a more adventurous mindset, willing to try new techniques and experiment with improvisation. Family and friends became witnesses to her growth. They saw her transformation from a student struggling to keep pace into a performer capable of taking initiative and leading her own rhythm. Small gatherings and informal performances in her home became opportunities for her to test new ideas, to explore creative expression, and to refine her skills in a supportive environment. The energy she created was contagious, drawing others into her rhythms and helping them experience music in a new, tactile way. At school, she began to gain recognition. Teachers and students alike started to acknowledge her progress, noting her unique approach and the depth of her understanding. While she had once been seen as someone limited by her deafness, she was now viewed as an innovator, someone who challenged conventional ideas about music and performance. Even skeptics began to pause, watching closely to see what she would do next, and often leaving impressed by her skill and determination. The first public performance she participated in with a group was a turning point. Standing on stage with other musicians, she felt a surge of nervous energy. The audience watched, curious and unsure of what to expect. But as she began to play, she felt the rhythm through her body, guiding her hands and feet in perfect synchronization. Each strike of the drum resonated with confidence, each movement a testament to her perseverance. Though she could not hear the applause, the expressions of astonishment and admiration on the faces around her spoke volumes. She had not only kept pace with the group but added her own energy, enhancing the overall performance. The experience was transformative. She realized that challenges were not obstacles to be feared but opportunities to grow, to learn, and to redefine what was possible. Each doubt, each skeptical comment, and each internal struggle had contributed to her development, shaping her into a performer who could inspire others without relying on conventional methods. She learned to embrace the uniqueness of her approach, understanding that her way of experiencing rhythm was just as valid and impactful as anyone else's. In the days following the performance, she reflected on how far she had come. From the small, tentative taps on improvised surfaces to commanding a stage alongside other musicians, her journey had been one of resilience, creativity, and determination. She recognized that the path ahead would continue to have obstacles, but she also knew that she had developed the tools and mindset to face them. Her confidence was rooted not only in her skill but in the understanding that her passion and persistence could overcome any doubt. Through all the challenges she had faced, she had discovered something profound: the power of self-belief. The world might question her abilities, friends and neighbors might doubt her, and the internal pressure to excel might seem overwhelming at times, but she had learned to trust herself, to rely on her instincts, and to let her body communicate what words and sound could not. She understood that her journey was unique, that the way she experienced rhythm was her own, and that the obstacles she faced only made her accomplishments more meaningful. By the end of this part of her story, she had not only mastered more advanced rhythms, but had also developed the resilience and confidence to confront skepticism and doubt. She had transformed from a student struggling with limitations into a young performer capable of navigating complex challenges, expressing herself through rhythm, and inspiring those around her. The journey had been difficult, filled with moments of frustration and uncertainty, but it had also been rich with discovery, growth, and the realization that true strength comes from within. She was ready for the next stage, ready to face even larger challenges, and ready to show the world that her unique connection with rhythm could move hearts, inspire minds, and break down barriers. The path ahead was unknown, but she had already proven that perseverance, creativity, and passion could turn obstacles into triumphs and doubts into opportunities. Her story was far from over, and the world was about to witness something extraordinary. The day of the big event arrived, and she could feel a mixture of excitement and nervousness running through her body. It was a school concert, but the auditorium was packed with parents, students, and local visitors. She had been preparing for this moment for months, practicing late into the night, rehearsing every rhythm, and imagining the energy of a crowd watching her. Even though she could not hear the music, she could feel its presence and knew that this performance would be different from anything she had done before. As she approached the stage, her heart pounded in her chest. The bright lights shone down, casting long shadows across the drum set. She climbed onto the stool, placing her hands on the drums and her feet on the pedals. For a brief moment, she closed her eyes, taking a deep breath, grounding herself in the vibrations that she had spent years learning to interpret. She reminded herself of all the practice, the challenges she had overcome, and the determination that had brought her to this stage. The audience watched quietly, some whispering in curiosity, others skeptical, unsure of what to expect. Teachers, classmates, and neighbors had all spoken of her talent, but many had never seen her perform in front of such a large crowd. This added a layer of pressure, but it also fueled her resolve. She had faced doubt before, faced challenges that seemed impossible, and yet here she was, ready to show the world what she could do. Her teacher gave her a subtle signal and she began. Her hands struck the drums in precise motion, her feet moving with perfect timing. The vibrations from the bass drum pulsed through her body, giving her a steady rhythm to follow. Each beat was a conversation between her and the instrument, a silent language that spoke louder than words. Her arms moved fluidly, her body swaying with the motion, and her energy radiated across the stage. The audience began to notice. At first, there was quiet observation, people leaning forward to see how she managed the drums without hearing. But as she continued, the energy in the auditorium shifted. Every strike was filled with confidence and passion. Her movements conveyed emotion, and those watching could feel it. Even though she could not hear the cheers, the excitement in the room was palpable, vibrating through the floor, and she responded instinctively, increasing the intensity and rhythm of her performance. The complexity of her routine increased. She combined rapid hand movements with intricate footwork, maintaining coordination that seemed almost impossible. Every pattern she executed was deliberate, each beat conveying emotion and storytelling. She had practiced for this moment, but there was also improvisation, a natural flow that came from her deep connection with rhythm. She was no longer just playing the drums. She was commanding them, shaping sound into a tangible energy that everyone around her could feel. Some in the audience gasped in surprise, not because of the perfection of her performance, but because of the power and emotion she was projecting. Teachers and classmates exchanged looks of awe, realizing that the girl who had once struggled to participate in music had become the centerpiece of the performance. Even skeptics who had doubted her abilities were now leaning forward, captivated by the force of her energy and the confidence with which she played. As the performance continued, she lost herself in the rhythm. The vibrations of the drums guided her, allowing her to anticipate changes in tempo and transitions within the piece. She could feel every note in her body, her hands and feet moving in perfect harmony with the energy she generated. Each strike of the drum was like a heartbeat, pulsating through the auditorium and connecting her to the audience in a way that transcended words and sound. Her movements became more dynamic. She leaned into the drums, striking with intensity, then pulled back, creating contrast and flow. The cymbals shimmered under her touch, the snare snapped crisply, and the bass drum reverberated with power. The combination created a sense of drama and excitement that left the audience breathless. They could sense her determination, her skill, and the sheer joy of her performance, and it created an electric atmosphere that filled the room. Midway through the piece, there was a particularly challenging section, combining fast rolls and precise footwork. She had practiced this section countless times, and it was now a true test of her ability to maintain control and rhythm under pressure. Her heart raced, but she trusted the years of practice and the connection she had built with her drums. Her hands flew over the snare and toms, her feet striking the bass drum in perfect sync, and she moved with confidence, each beat resonating with clarity and energy. The audience held their breath, captivated by the seamless flow of rhythm and movement. When she reached the final section, she built to a powerful climax. Her arms moved with intensity, the cymbals crashed, and the bass drum echoed like a heartbeat through the auditorium. The energy she had cultivated was palpable, filling the room with excitement and awe. Though she could not hear the applause, she felt the vibrations, the movement, and the energy radiating from the crowd. She smiled, exhilarated, knowing she had given everything she had to the performance. As the final beat echoed and she lowered her sticks, the room erupted in thunderous applause. The audience stood, clapping and cheering, some moved to tears by the power of her performance. Teachers and classmates crowded around her, praising her skill, determination, and courage. Even those who had doubted her abilities were now in awe, unable to deny the talent and passion she had displayed. She had not only performed, she had inspired, leaving a mark on everyone who had witnessed her. Her parents rushed forward, wrapping her in a tight embrace. They had watched their child grow from a curious, determined girl into a performer capable of commanding a stage, overcoming obstacles, and expressing herself in a way that words could not capture. Tears filled their eyes as they whispered congratulations, proud of the courage, skill, and heart their child had shown. She felt their love and support, a grounding presence amidst the whirlwind of excitement. The experience transformed her perception of herself. She realized that all the practice, all the doubt, and all the challenges she had faced were part of a journey that had led to this moment. She had proven to herself and the world that limitations could be overcome through determination, creativity, and passion. The drums were no longer just instruments. They were extensions of her spirit, a means to communicate, inspire, and move others. After the concert, she was approached by people who had been inspired by her performance. They wanted to understand how she played without hearing, to learn about the techniques she used, and to share in the excitement of her achievement. Her story spread, inspiring others to pursue their passions regardless of obstacles. She realized that her journey was bigger than herself. It was a message to anyone who had been underestimated or doubted, showing that resilience and creativity could break barriers. She continued to practice, refine her skills, and explore new rhythms. Each performance, whether large or small, was an opportunity to connect with the world in a unique way. She learned that music was not only about hearing but also about feeling, interpreting, and expressing energy through motion and intention. The drums became a symbol of her strength, a bridge between her world and the world of others, and a source of endless joy and fulfillment. In the following weeks, her reputation as a talented and inspiring performer grew. Teachers, classmates, and neighbors spoke of her courage and skill, often sharing stories of her determination and the power of her performances. She became a role model for those who faced challenges, showing that persistence, creativity, and self-belief could overcome even the most daunting obstacles. Her journey had reached a pivotal point, but she knew that it was only the beginning of many more performances and opportunities to inspire others. Through it all, she remained grounded and humble. She remembered the early days, when she tapped on pots and tables, learning rhythms through vibrations and movement. She never forgot the struggle, the doubts, or the quiet moments of perseverance that had brought her to this stage. Each success, each applause, and each inspired face reminded her that the journey was about more than recognition. It was about expressing herself, connecting with others, and showing that passion and determination could defy expectations. By the end of this part of her journey, she had accomplished something remarkable. She had faced a large audience, conquered fear and doubt, and delivered a performance that left everyone in awe. She had shown the world that being deaf was not a limitation, but a different way of experiencing and expressing music. Her story became a testament to the power of determination, creativity, and the human spirit. She had shaken the stadium, not just with the drums, but with the energy, courage, and heart that she poured into every beat. The path ahead was bright, full of new challenges and opportunities, and she was ready to continue her journey, inspiring others and proving that anything was possible with passion and perseverance. The performance had changed everything. After she stepped off the stage, she felt a mixture of exhaustion, exhilaration, and pride. For the first time, she realized that she had not only proven something to herself but had inspired everyone who had been watching. The energy she had poured into the drums reverberated beyond the auditorium, leaving an impression that could be felt in hearts as well as in the room itself. She walked through the crowd, smiling at faces full of admiration and surprise, each one reflecting a story of disbelief turned into awe. Her family greeted her with tears of joy. They had always believed in her, but seeing her on stage, commanding attention and respect, made them feel as if they had witnessed a miracle. They embraced her tightly, telling her how proud they were of her courage, persistence, and incredible talent. She felt the warmth of their support, and it grounded her, reminding her that while applause was fleeting, love and belief from those who mattered most were lasting and unwavering. As days passed, the impact of her performance grew. Teachers and students could not stop talking about her ability, the way she had translated her understanding of rhythm into a full, powerful performance. Even neighbors and local community members began to take notice. Many came to see her practice, fascinated by her unique method of experiencing music through vibrations and movement. She was no longer just a student. She was a source of inspiration, a living example of how determination and creativity could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles. She continued to practice diligently, always seeking to improve and explore new possibilities with her drums. Every session was a journey of discovery, a chance to refine her technique and explore her connection with rhythm. She tried new patterns, experimented with tempo and intensity, and allowed her creativity to guide her hands and feet. She realized that drumming was not just about following beats. It was about expressing emotion, telling stories, and connecting with others on a level that transcended words and sound. Friends who had supported her from the beginning continued to encourage her, and some even joined in, learning to tap along with her rhythms and share in the vibrations she created. The room would become alive with energy, a testament to the power of music to bring people together, even when it could not be heard in the traditional sense. She found joy in these moments, seeing how her dedication and passion inspired those around her, making them feel a part of something extraordinary. At T-School, she began receiving invitations to perform at larger events. Local community gatherings, talent shows, and even regional competitions asked her to participate. Each opportunity brought new challenges and new audiences, but she approached them with the same focus and determination that had carried her through every obstacle before. She understood that her journey was not just about personal achievement. It was about inspiring others to believe in themselves, to see that limitations existed only when they allowed them to. Her story began to spread beyond the immediate community. Articles and interviews highlighted her journey, her unique approach to music, and the resilience that had enabled her to succeed. People were fascinated by her ability to feel music, to translate rhythm into movement, and to convey emotion without sound. She became a symbol of hope for those facing challenges, a reminder that passion and determination could transform lives and break barriers that seemed insurmountable. Despite the attention, she remained grounded. She never let praise or recognition distract her from the joy of creating music and exploring rhythm. She continued to practice, to experiment, and to challenge herself, always striving to grow. Each new performance was an opportunity to connect, to communicate, and to inspire. She learned that true success was not measured by applause or accolades, but by the impact she could have on others and the fulfillment she found in her own expression. One day, during a large regional performance, she faced her biggest audience yet. The auditorium was filled with hundreds of people, each one curious about the girl who could perform without hearing. As she took her place behind the drums, she felt a familiar mix of excitement and nervousness, but she also felt a deep sense of confidence. She had faced doubt before, she had overcome obstacles, and she knew that she could rely on her body, her intuition, and her understanding of rhythm to guide her. When she began to play, the room was captivated. Each strike of the drum resonated with power and precision. The vibrations traveled through the floor, reaching the audience in a way that was almost tangible. Her movements were fluid, expressive, and full of energy. The audience could feel the story she was telling through rhythm, experiencing emotion, tension, and release in every beat. It was more than a performance. It was a connection, a shared experience that transcended sound. By the end of the performance, the audience was on their feet, applauding and cheering with enthusiasm. Teachers, peers, and community members were amazed by her skill, her courage, and the unique way she experienced and shared music. She had done more than just play the drums. She had created an experience, a memory, and an inspiration that would stay with everyone who witnessed it. The energy and emotion she conveyed were undeniable, proof that her abilities were not limited by her deafness, but enhanced by her unique perspective. After the performance, many people approached her, eager to understand her journey and the methods she used to feel music. She shared her experiences, explaining how she used vibrations, observation, and intuition to connect with rhythm. People were fascinated, and many expressed how inspired they were by her determination and creativity. Her story became a reminder that passion and perseverance could overcome obstacles, and that limitations were often just challenges waiting to be transformed into opportunities. She continued to perform at various events, always exploring new rhythms, techniques, and ways to express herself. She collaborated with other musicians, finding innovative ways to integrate her unique approach into group performances. She learned that music could be experienced in many forms, not just through sound, and that her perspective offered something valuable and inspiring to others. Her journey had become a testament to creativity, resilience, and the power of self-belief. Over time, she realized that her story was about more than just her own achievements. It was about inspiring others to embrace their passions, to challenge limitations, and to believe in their potential. She became a mentor to younger students, encouraging them to explore music and creativity in their own ways. She taught them that challenges could be opportunities, and that perseverance, curiosity, and determination could open doors that once seemed closed. Her journey was far from over, but she had reached a point of triumph and recognition that few could imagine when she first began. She had faced doubt, skepticism, and obstacles, yet she had transformed them into achievements, growth, and inspiration. Her performances had touched countless lives, and her story continued to spread, motivating others to pursue their dreams, no matter the challenges they faced. In the quiet moments, when she practiced alone, she reflected on her journey. She remembered the early days, tapping on tables and pots, feeling vibrations, and exploring rhythm in her own way. She remembered the struggles, the doubts, and the moments of frustration, and she smiled, knowing that every step, every effort, and every challenge had brought her to this point. She understood that her journey was about more than music. It was about resilience, creativity, and the power of belief in oneself. As she looked ahead, she saw endless possibilities. There were more performances to give, more rhythms to explore, and more people to inspire. She knew that her journey would continue to challenge her, but she also knew that she had the strength, creativity, and determination to face whatever lay ahead. Her story had proven that passion and perseverance could overcome barriers, and she was ready to continue inspiring the world, one beat at a time. By the end of this chapter in her life, she had transformed from a girl whose abilities were doubted into a young performer who commanded respect and admiration. She had not only mastered her instrument, but had also become a symbol of courage, resilience, and inspiration. Her story showed that limits are often illusions, and that determination, creativity, and passion could turn challenges into triumphs. She had shaken the stadium with her drums, but more importantly, she had shaken the hearts of everyone who witnessed her journey. The future was bright, and she was ready to continue her extraordinary path, inspiring countless others to believe in themselves and the power of their dreams.